Hey guys, welcome back to Magic TV. My name's Craig. It is 9 o'clock, and that means it's time for a Talk Magic. And I don't think I have been so excited as I am right now because I am interviewing a personal hero of mine, the man who I think is the greatest stage illusionist of all time, somebody who has really inspired
Wow.
me in my career, a legend. And I do not use that
Don't
word.
say legend. That just makes me old.
Well, you are Mark KAILIN, the legend, the myth, the one and only. How are you?
The myth, the mythster, all of it. I'm doing good, actually.
It's good
It's
to
a
see you.
beautiful, the weather's beautiful today. It's the afternoon here. We're coming out of the pandemic here in Nevada, US, and all of that is very encouraging. It's starting to feel a little bit normal again.
It's fantastic. And I know that you've been busy during the pandemic, and we're going to get to that in a little bit, but you've reinvented yourself so many times. And recently you've gone in a completely different direction. But we were just talking before the camera started rolling about how you have reinvented yourself. And you said, let me go through the different ways that I've reinvented myself as a performer. So,
Okay.
before we even go anywhere with this, Mark, I need to hear this. I need to hear all the
I
different.
hope I don't leave anything out. It's off the top of my head. But so I started in this business, uh, part of a magic club called the Long Beach Mystics. They put a lot of emphasis on doing something original. Uh, and at the time, this was the mid 70s. You know, the king of magic in those days was Marvin Roy with a light bulb act, having a theme. So my very first act, I was the magical pool shark. I did an entire act based around billiards and pool and the linking racks and the manipulation and all kinds of stuff. And that's when I was about, I guess I started that when I was 15 and until I was probably 19 or 20. And I had success with it. But as many do at around 20 years old, I thought, this act, although, and I had an assistant and we were doing cruise ships and stuff, but I realized it's not going to get me out of the house. I'm still living at home. There's just so much earning potential with this nightclub act. And so at the very same time, I remember a good friend of mine, Bill Smith, took me to Las Vegas for the very first time. And in course of 2 nights, we saw Siegfried and Roy at the Frontier, of which I was like, as you can imagine, blown away. It was like, I'll never be like that. But then we went over and saw Carlton and Company with a cat act over at the MGM, I think it was. And then over to the Flamingo Hilton in Vegas. And there was a show, City Lights, I think it was. And Vince Carmen was a feature illusion act. And to be honest, I mean, we were talking to Bill after seeing these. We were driving back from Vegas in his van, and he told me what these guys were making, you know? And I remember thinking, Siegfried and Roy, untouchable. But what those guys are doing, I could do that. I can do that. And so that was the first time, I think, it was a fundamental shift when magic became this like snowball rolling down a hill to become a Las Vegas cat magician, which I did. I'll give you the opportunity of referring back if you want more info as I go through these stages. But yes, built this illusion act, invested money I didn't even have. I borrowed from my Bank of America, and got my first gig at Knott's Berry Farm, a theme park here in Southern California. That led to my first production show, a topless ice show called Razzle Dazzle here in Reno, Nevada. Fantastic, 20 years old. There's, 12 topless showgirls on ice. Perfect. You didn't even have to pay me, but they did really well. And then I spent most of the 80s as what you would, I have some ridiculous pictures, haircuts, explosion, cats, primates, spandex, tons of spandex. But it was that's the first time I learned there's a market, do what you need to do to be attractive to that market. And it was successful. By the end of the 80s, I've been in Spellbound, which was a very popular show. But for whatever reason, I remember I got a gig in Guam, and that's where I met Jinger. So that was the next reinvention, which was in a lot of ways, and actually the reinvention started before Jinger, which was the realization that all of this spandex and that was also limiting. That at some point, being a 9-minute act with all flash, the magician in me was saying, there's got to be more. So started to make some fundamental changes there in how I dressed, how I approached it, and that started to evolve. But then that got me this gig in Guam, of all places, which is like a Japanese tourism market. And they don't have gambling, but they have big production shows. So I was in a show there, and I met Jinger, and that magic happened. And we were there for 2 years, almost to the day. And when we came back from Guam, I mean, we had really spent those 2 years. We had something. Yeah. The Jinger's addition to what I had already started all those years was just a fire. And
I was just about to say, watching you and Jinger perform was so, it made such an impact on me. It was the first time that I'd seen an illusion act where the assistant was as much a part of the act as the illusionist. Up until that point, it was like, here's a faceless girl, she's getting into a box, and she wasn't anything but a prop. And I'll remember when it was, I remember seeing you do the Wakeling Soaring in Half. And the things that made that for me was watching Jinger and her byplay with the person on stage and the scarf and just everything. It was just like, this isn't like Mark KAILIN and a girl. This is Kalin and Jinger. And I'd never seen that before. And that was amazing.
Well, it was a process. And it was also the next phase for us, because we had tremendous success doing all that flash and stuff before the Wakeling sawing. But, again, you get this sense that there's more, and a certain part of you, it was clear to me, Jinger at that point actually, well, here's what's really interesting. And it brings in a key person to this next phase, which really was what led us to that, which was we were in a show, Spellbound, and lots of flash, and but I don't know, we just felt we needed to expand, but you don't know what to do. You don't know what to do. You know that you've got to grow, but you don't really know what it is or how you're going to get there. And I remember that somebody said, we were doing Spellbound in Vegas, and somebody said, who's in the audience? Joni Spina. Oh, Joni Spina. Oh, I got it. So after the show, and if you've ever met Joni, anybody that knows Joni knows her energy and stuff. And so after the show, I go, oh, I'm a huge fan. The stuff that you've done with David is amazing. I hope you liked, what we did. And she says, oh, it was great, but there was, oh, no. I go, no. What? Tell me. This is Joni Spina. She goes, no. She didn't want to offend and everything. And then she said something. She says, well, you and Jinger have so much going for you, but everything you're doing is performing out to the audience. You're we had this trick with a Black Panther, but everything's presentational. She said, I bet if you at times turned away from the audience and created something between the two of you and let the audience in on it, then you'd have something. And it was like, what are you doing tomorrow? Can I hire you tomorrow? And that began our journey with Joni Spina. And I mean, that was just the teacher appearing at the right time with the information. And I didn't know, I just knew what she was saying was powerful and that we could do it. And then the other kind of profound moment came maybe a year later. And the funny story about how we ended up doing the Wakeling sawing, but it was a challenge. First of all, we were in Spellbound. We put it in the show. They hated it. Oh, it's so boring. And well, because there was no humor. It was a new piece of material. Jinger wasn't comfortable talking. And the question was, who is Jinger if she talks? You know, and your first thought is, well, she's like me. She should say, well, good evening. And for the next thing, I shall be, you know, or maybe we should put somebody else in the box and, you know. So Joni tells us to go to improv classes in Vegas once a week. That this juggler, Michael Hawley, and Joni was there in these classes too. So I've been in stuff like improv. I'm very comfortable with it. So, you know, I'm hot stuff in improv. I'm talking loud, I'm doing everything. And then it's Ginger's turn to get up out of her comfort zone. And you could barely hear her voice over a squeak, you know. Oh, I'm just like, oh, geez, this is so embarrassing. You know, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed for her. Class gets over, we're in the parking lot, going to the car, and Joni catches up with us. And she said, I know what's next for you guys. I know how you need to approach this Wakeling sawing. And she says, it's Ginger's vulnerability. She was a powerhouse when she was moving, performing, but when she speaks, and if you know Jinger, she's actually a very sweet, quiet, vulnerable person. And what's funny is, boom, again, you know, that gave us a road. That was an observation. We probably would have long since canceled that trip and said, now we'll find something else.
Wow.
And the funny thing is, there is no doubt on stage in the Wakeling, me, these guys, all this stuff, Jinger is just there, vulnerable, you know, never trying to be funny, but quite funny. Who's in power? Jinger.
That's amazing. That's fantastic. And I think there's a lesson to be learned there that I think that so many magicians that are watching this need to pick up on is, it doesn't matter where you are. I mean, you were at that point in your career, you were in Vegas, you were in Spellbound, and yet still you said, I need to work with this person. And I think sometimes magicians, they fool themselves into thinking that they're brilliant and they're perfect and they don't need any help because they're the absolute best. But there's always somebody out there that you can consult with that knows, you know, that can help you take that step to the next level.
Yeah. You know, the thing is, if you're in your, you know, you always need to be out of your comfort zone pushing. That's how you grow. That's how good turns to great. And, you know, and also I think there are inherently two personalities in magic, and gray area, but there are those that come off stage and they go, man, I killed. Oh, did you see? I killed it tonight. And there's other performers that come off and they go, you know what? It's going to be better tomorrow. I can tell you who the better magician is between those two and who's going to continue to grow.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. And you have. I mean, you've, as we said right at the very beginning of this interview, you have constantly reinvented yourself over and over again. And just when you think that you're there, it's never enough. You're always looking to take that next step, which is, again, something that so many people could learn from that are watching this.
Well, it also, it's my nature. I'm a project person, you know. I love magic, and I love finding new ways to be in love with magic, new ways to present it, new situations to put it in. And I'm not interested if it's just not interesting to me if it's doing it the way somebody else did it.
Mm, yeah. Well, before we carry on with your career, let me ask you a couple of questions about what you've said so far. Number
Okay.
one, obviously, Joni is no longer with us, but you worked with her for so long, and I remember meeting her and you at the same time. What one thing, one piece of advice would you give everyone watching this that you learned from Joni? I know you learned so much from her, but is there one thing in particular that you can kind of say?
Gosh, you know, her influence and friendship was so profound. To try to reduce that to one thing is really hard because I learned so much. And to this day, Ginger and I often, you'll hear us say this, we run into a wall and you go, what would Joni do? What would be her choice in this situation creatively? Number one, you know, a director doesn't have to be a director, but you need to get magicians. It's our nature. We do everything ourselves because that's how we start in our room. And first we learn our little tricks, then we cut cardboard and make our props. And then we make our music, and then we put some lights up in the living room. Then we move those lights to our first show, and we buy a tuxedo or whatever, go to the mall, and we can't get out of that thing of allowing other people to give their sense of taste and their choices. And it doesn't have to be some, you know, I think in the beginning days with Joni, there's no way we could pay her what she was worth. But we were hungry and we were excited to grow. And that was exciting to her. So that earned us, you know, those first times. So that I would say it's important to, you know, open up to some of the talents that are around us.
Mm, that's really good advice. Now, I want to backtrack slightly, just before we carry on, just because there's going to be new magicians that are watching this that are going to be completely befuddled, because now, obviously, in 2021, when you get into magic, it's all about close-up. It's all
Yes.
about, you haven't mentioned close-up once, because back when I got into magic and when you got into magic, it wasn't about close-up magic at all. Hardly anyone was doing close-up magic. It was all about, I remember the first thing I wanted to buy when I got into magic was a chair suspension. I had nothing to do with it. I had nowhere to do it. I just knew I needed this thing in my life, right? So that was the same with a lot of people back in the day. So my question is, have you got any advice for the newer magicians that are close-up performers in terms of how to get on stage? Because it's the holy grail for magicians, isn't it? I want to perform on stage. Yeah, I'm a close-up magician, but I want to perform on stage. But the thought of performing on stage scares them to death. It's like, oh my God, there's a big difference.
How come?
Well, I hear it all the time on the channel. There's a big difference between going up to a group of 3 or 4 people and saying, hi, I'm a magician, and then walking on stage cold in front of 1,000 people and grabbing their attention. It's something that just scares the hell out of a lot of magicians. And this is something you've done your entire career.
Well, wow. Yeah, I'm trying to, there's so many answers to that, but I'm trying to form it to this particular situation. I mean, it's like anything. First of all, I don't really differentiate largely between, I mean, yes, there's great differences between stage illusion, or what we call grand illusion, and close up. But good magic is good magic. Mm-hmm. So everything still applies. And I would, you know, thinking off the top of my head, my first answer would be apply the same principles that you did when you started doing close-up magic. start with a piece of material that is stage worthy. And that, as you know, does not have to be an illusion. In fact, doesn't, nowadays, it's a lot of money to spend. It just needs to be something that plays well on stage. And you get your head around staging possibilities and what, but I would say start with that. And maybe it's just a trick that plays both close up and on stage, so that you can still work it out and get a sense for it. But when the opportunity or the crowd starts to get bigger, you've got something or a couple of things that you go, oh, well, this is good because I can bring 10 people out of the audience and line up on the stage. Same trick, but it's just amazing, and it's funny because people will always do funny things when you put them on stage. Just try it, and guaranteed people will laugh. And people are going to do something stupid. So that's what and it's interesting. So here's my observation. Close-up magic to me over the last 10, 20 years has evolved so much. It's become such a creative force, and mentalism. Just, stage illusion goes in cycles, and we've been stuck in a rut for a long time. And where stage illusion used to dominate on TV, Copperfield and Henning and the World's Greatest Magic and stuff, now it's all the same crap. All that creativity that's put into close-up. One of the reasons, I'll just say this, one of the reasons I'm so enjoying this weird Reno is I get to perform in it, and I get to perform magic that's not on casters.
Yes.
And I really enjoy it. And I really enjoy coming up with ideas that are appropriate for this, but also methods and tricks and things that I've admired for years and thought, oh, if I ever did anything like that. But I think stage illusion has suffered more than anything, partially because of the culture of YouTube. There was, if you look at some of those TV specials during the 80s and 90s in magic, illusion specials, World's Greatest Magic, Hidden Secrets of Magic, all those, it was all about the most original, weirdest, biggest, greatest piece of stage illusion you can do. But something altered that. And I think part of it was, one, the business changing, less of a call for an hour and a half full stage illusion show at a casino. And illusions are expensive. So, gosh, if I'm going to buy an illusion, I'm going to buy something, not only that I know exactly what I'm getting, but I know exactly what to do with it. And I'll watch all those YouTube videos so I know exactly what to say. And it created this culture of repetition.
Yeah.
Losender table, John, what is it? Normally I can name off like the 5 things that you start any illusionist video, and you can pretty much name 5 or 6 illusions that are going to be in there for most of them.
Yeah, you're right.
But close-up's not that way.
But do you think that's because there's more people? Close-up magic is an easier thing to get into. You buy a pack of cards and hey presto, you're a close-up magician, and you can start creative people can start coming up with their own stuff. There's such a high barrier to entry to get into illusions. I mean, I know because I've got an illusion act here in the UK. I've got a warehouse full of stuff not even anywhere near your scale, but I've got a huge warehouse full of stuff. I've got a van. I've got multiple girls in case ones aren't available. And it's a very difficult thing to get into. So there's less people that are being creative because there's less people getting a chance to do it. Do you think that?
Actually, there's just the same amount of people being creative. There is not the market for people that want to purchase that creativity or take a chance. You know, as we know with any magic trick, and it's even more so with illusions, you know, whatever your best planned thing was, it's never going to come out just like that. You're going to do your first show and you're going to realize all the mistakes you made. And I need to rebuild this, or I need to change this, or whatever. It's just the nature of magic. It's a fussy little art. And you cannot calculate it on a piece of paper with a CAD drawing. But it's expensive. Rehearsal halls and, you know, assistants and music editing and, you know, and so a lot of people don't have the desire or the funding or whatever to go through that process with an illusion. Like you said, you might do with a close-up trick. Hey, I'll just try it. And this time I'll try it. I got an idea for something that nobody's ever done with this. I'm just going to try it. Harder to do with illusions.
100%. While we're on this subject, before we move on, can you offer any advice on character and how to develop a character as a performer? Because this is something, and we talked about this with you and Jinger. You are so different to any other illusion act that I've ever seen. And you've got, and I want to talk in a minute, not now, but I want to talk in a minute about the Carnival of Wonders. And when I do, your character in Carnival of Wonders is very different to your characters. It's similar, but it's also different to when you're just straight up Mark KAILIN and Jinger Leigh. So how do you develop a character that's unique, that allows people to, you know, flourish on stage and grow?
Well, it's funny because I can offer some guidance in this, particularly coming from somebody that spent so much of my career trying to find who I was. And that's why it's so much fun to look back and see the spandex and this, you know, oh, those were the Copperfield years, you know, clearly I was, you know, and then finally through a process, yes, you attach to something and you identify it and it takes over you. And then it becomes in some ways easy. Choosing material is really easy because I love that trick. It's not right for me. It's fantastic for that person. You know, whether that's, you know, Dan Sperry doing the broken bottles with the hand, great routine, but it just wouldn't look right on me. I wouldn't have known that maybe 20 years ago. So first thing that you read in all these magic books, the advice is be yourself, but nobody tells you, how the hell do you be yourself? You know, what does that mean? So here's some thoughts. Number one, being yourself, first of all, number one, it's the idiosyncrasies in people that make them interesting. We tend to think that on stage, we have to look perfect, we have to act perfect, speak perfect, and hide whatever we are self-conscious about, in which case we're actually pulling the focus away from our most powerful tools. You know, we identify with the imperfections. You know, I mean, I'm trying to think, it's so embarrassing for me to try to think of an analogy that's not, you know, 100 years old, but comes to mind an entertainer very popular many years ago, Jimmy Durante, which just had this gigantic bulbous nose. But you can't think of him without thinking of that. That was him. That's what set him apart.
Yeah.
When you meet somebody at a party, you scan the room and somebody comes in and they seem all perfect and everything's perfect. And then you meet them and there's just, that's all they are. But then there's somebody else over here that has a quirk or a talent or a career or something, and you find that you're drawn to those things. So I think number one, it's identifying and being comfortable with who you are. And the other way to do that, ask your friends. Ask 10 friends to write down 5 words that describe you. You know what's going to happen? You're going to see a pattern. You're going to see the same things coming up. And they're not all going to be things like the most handsome person I've ever seen. But they're going to be things that they think of you, what stands out. That's a place to start. So then it's just a matter of it really becomes an accentuation of certain parts of those things. Jinger is many things. She is a terrific mother, but we don't include that in our thing, not that one. But we did find out that besides being this amazing powerhouse, she's actually quite sweet and vulnerable and self-deprecating. Should we hide that? No, we use it. It's what makes her endearing.
Yeah.
So those things will start you. And I can tell you that the fundamental process for me started with Carnival of Wonders, because for a person that has searched to be something and not know who or what that was, it took becoming a producer and creating this entire show with all these elements to, for the first time in my life, hover over it and see what all the pieces were of the puzzle and what Jeff brought and what Jinger brought and what all of these things brought, and finally see the whole that I can go into. And I can tell you what that was Jeff was outrageous and flamboyant and very funny. And Jinger added that glamour and physicality. And I'm kind of a normal guy. I'm more like the audience. So that was what I could see. I need to be the guy that connects all of you out there with all these people up here. I'm like you. This is an amazing world up here, isn't it? And that was a profound discovery for me, to find that place. And, you know, I can just be normal, but warm and inviting.
Well, as you've brought it up, let's talk about the Carnival of Wonders, because obviously that's probably, we got to the point where you and Jinger had finally kind of worked out how to make your act what we know it to be today. And then obviously the Carnival of Wonders came along, which is incredible. For people that haven't seen it, I was so fortunate to see it live. And there's 2 moments that I think, when people ask me what are the most amazing things I've ever seen, there's 2 moments in that show. The very beginning with the poster. And I remember when I first watched the Carnival of Wonders, and I was like, I know all about stage illusions. And then this poster just dropped, and then Jeff just jumped out of it. And I'm like, that just makes no sense. I literally just went, what? In the middle of the audience. It just didn't, it was the most magical thing. And then the finale, when the entire rig goes into your suitcase. I mean, goosebumps, genuinely goosebumps. I'm going on record now saying this is the greatest show I've ever seen, honestly, Mark. And it had such an impact on me. I'm a Carnival of Wonders. I've got all the T-shirts and the posters. I've got the posters up in my magic room. I love that show. Like, can you tell us where it came from? How did you end up working with Jeff on that?
You know, I'll tell you, it was, the answer was, it was a huge creative step. It was, again, feeling like I'm wearing my high school pants, and the influence of Joni, and at the time, Jim Steinmeier. I was, he was scripting for us, and also really what we were in Spellbound with Hobson, Jinger, me, Hobson, and by that time we were probably, with the exception of, and Spellbound always had multiple acts, but really it was just Jinger and I and Hobson in this version in Vegas, because that's all they needed. Throw in a couple of dance numbers and they had a whole show. Every element was there. Well, we recognized that. And of course, as you do, you feel your oats and you think, the only thing that we're not bringing to the table here are these little dance numbers. And they're not even very good. So it starts that ball rolling. Well, look, gosh, what if we did a show together, the three of us? But now I've got Joni and I've got Jim. And as we start to expand and think about a show, again, it's that sensibility. You start to dream and you start to talk to people that are scenic designers, and everybody brings something, but you're all on the same page. I mean, you all have a vision to do something, people get excited, and it just grows. Our first version of it was in Atlantic City, and it was very scaled down. It was called Before Your Very Eyes, and it was just kind of like a test, but we had something. There was a chemistry, and there was something that Jinger particularly enjoyed about that show, and that was, for the very first time, there were three individuals, not Mark, KAILIN, and Jinger, magician, assistant, and comedian. But we worked very hard to make sure that each one of us was presented to the audience in a way of three individuals: Leroy, Talma, and Bosco, whatever. Mm-hmm. That was an inspiration. I got a poster right there. But yeah, and really what those two things you remember are not great tricks, but you remember them context and emotion. Mm-hmm. Because what Carnival did was filter magic through a sense of emotion. It was this weird carnival that magically appeared. Mm. Well, I mean, I don't mean to be so heady but to say that carnival's like life. You never know what's around the corner. Some parts are frightening, the House of Horrors. Some parts are romantic, the Tunnel of Love, so on and so forth. So that gave us a base. And all we really had to do was find the right music and the right tricks to go with the different carnival realms. But what you describe, yes, it's a good trick. You unroll a poster and the steps out. But also, I walk out with a carnival bag and there's a poster in it, and the stage is empty and there's a moon up there, and you unroll it, and all of a sudden this carnival, boom, becomes alive. And all of these wacky, it's just like it magically comes out of this carpet bag.
Yeah.
We follow this journey, and there's an arc to it, and there's certain techniques that I learned from Joni. It was such a learning for all of us. But then in the end, big production, back down to the beginning with the bag and this huge expansive curtain that says Carnival of Wonders, and a few little words to tie it up and to connect once again with the people with one last thought. And then I tear up, and then boom, you clap your hands and the whole show disappears into the bag, and you pick it up and take it off. You remember it because not the technical aspects, but because of the context and how it was presented.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry to be so long-winded.
No.
Please edit.
Not editing a damn thing.
It didn't fade out.
That was amazing. It was amazing. And you obviously got a chance later on to bring it back as a one-off event for Magic Live.
Yes, and mixed feelings about that. Loved doing it, but if anybody saw it set into a theater. That was the corporate version. That's what we could do in Magic Live, in installing, you know. So yes, very proud of it. But when people say, oh, I saw Carnival of Wonders at Magic Live, I go, oh. But if you really saw it, you sat in that theater, and you know, it's like anything, you polish something over and over. When you can be in a theater for a year or 2 years or 4 years, you just keep polishing and touching it up, whether it's scenery or magic or scripting.
Absolutely. What was the time period between Carnival of Wonders ending and it coming, doing a one-off performance at Magic Live? Was it a few years?
Oh, if Jinger was here, she'd nail that right away. She goes, well, that was, so Carnival of Wonders, the first version was in Atlantic City before we was 97. Then we got our contract here in Reno. We were living in Vegas, and it was a 3-year contract, which was astounding back in the good old days when you could just, there was no 4 walls or 2 walls. And that would have been 99, 2000. And eventually we moved it to the other theater, and we expanded it huge with the jumbo jet. And that lasted until 2002. So those were the core years. Then we did corporate events. We did a run in Atlantic City in 2010. That was, we did like 4 months there, and that was a blast. After not having to do in the show for 8 years, getting everybody back, and working a deal with Hobson, and we did it then. So Magic Live, you'd have to tell me what year that was.
Must have been about
5 years ago, 6 years ago.
Yeah, must have been about 5 or 6 years ago. Must have been about 2015, maybe 2014, 15. Something like
it
that.
Was terrifying.
Was it? Yeah, that was my question. I mean, you hadn't done it so long, other than that little, you know, it must have been difficult to bring it back. And yeah.
Well, difficult because number one, it was not up and running. So number two, you have very limited budget and time. And we had to do all of our rehearsals from like 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. when the room was empty. And when they say rehearsals, we're like dancers that have never been in the show, and you're training them for the illusions, the production numbers, and we can't have 6 dancers, we can only have 2. And oh, I mean, it was, and you got to light it and a lighting designer, and it was brutal. But I can remember the moment, you know, there's a moment right before you walk on stage, and I know it. I hear that music, and I walk out with the bag with the poster in it, and it's like I'm coming home. And you go there, and it just all becomes magic until that final moment. But I can remember just being like anything else, that feeling, that nightmare you have where you're not ready to do a show and you're still painting props and the curtains are opening in the nightmare. That's how it felt. Rehearsing right up, and I hope the curtain goes in the bag. I hope the lights, oh God, and I remember I stand across the stage, and on the other side of the stage was stage manager, been for years, and he would always like, you ready? And go. And that would cue music and go. I'd always give him the final, we're ready, boom. So we're staying on the side of the stage. It's a full house. I can hear everybody out there. I'm just going over in my head, trying to center. And I'm looking to Jono, and he's got to give me the thumbs up that they're technically ready. And it's not coming, and it's not coming. It's like 5 minutes after. I'm like, now it's really, so finally I just walk around the back of the stage, and I go to Jono, and I go, what's the deal? What's wrong? Why aren't we starting? And he says, oh, they're bringing Siegfried and Roy in. Like, no, I don't want to know.
Oh my God.
It was all fine. But that was like the last thing I needed to hear in those moments.
Oh my gosh. Well, here's a question for you. Was that a nice swan song to say goodbye to Carnival of Wonders, or would you like a chance to bring it back? I'm sure you've still got all of the props and you've still got all of the staging. If given the opportunity, would you bring it back again?
You know what? It's not going to happen. here's the deal. And to even say that out loud is so disappointing to so many people, because I have to tell you that, and anybody that was part of it, whether they were a dancer, whether they, you know, over the years, we have this, you know, different people came in and out, dancers that did it then and then didn't do it at that venue, then came back. But there was a magical feeling of it just being a great experience, great to be part of, and emotionally affecting an audience. It was just a magical show. It went beyond flash pots and props on casters. So there's always this hope that it'll come back one more time. I don't like wearing last year's pants. Or, you know, it's of a time.
Yeah.
It's of a time. It's a jewel. Tie it up. Let's remember it as a jewel. What's next out there? Mm-hmm. What's relevant to today's audiences?
Yeah.
So that's your answer.
I get it. But surely the audience today, I just got to say this, surely it is the most magical show I've ever seen. It is the best produced show I've ever seen. Surely the audiences of today...
I'm too fat.
No, you're not. Oh, well, I'm
talk about what you said right at the beginning. You don't want to, you project in the future, you don't want to be that person that people say they're past their prime.
Yeah.
There's no way today, we'd have to reinvent the show to make it as good as it was then. It was a particular time. There were certain things that we would be able to do it like then, but it would be 10% not as good or 20%, but what's the point? Let's do something new.
Absolutely.
That can be surprising and not live in the past.
100%. Yeah, I agree with that. But I wish people had got a chance to see it, because the chemistry with you and Jinger and Jeff was just incredible. It just
worked.
Yeah, it really did.
It just worked. We, you know, and to be honest, we look at it as many things we look at as a highlight. Our greatest competition in this business over the years for Jinger and I has not been other performers. It's been whatever our last project was. You know, when we sort of finished our thing with Carnival, that chapter, largely because the casino market changed. That was not a show you could produce as a 2-wall or a 4-wall. And it was an expensive show to run. And so we would have had to strip it down. You know, all those magic shows you see where they just work in front of the black curtain and they've got one assistant, and you go, what happened to the days? Well, they were expensive and the hotel was willing to pay. But then we opened Magic Underground.
Well, this is what I wanted to come to next. Yeah. Which is for those people that don't know, that's your own theater in Reno.
Was our own theater in Reno.
Yeah, it was your own theater in Reno. How did that come about, and what did that allow you to do that was different to Carnival?
You're asking all the right questions. So Carnival of Wonders had gone from the Flamingo, which was this great intimate 700-seat showroom, to the world's largest stage across town, a 1-acre stage at what's now the Grand Sierra Resort. We were vanishing an American Airlines jumbo jet in the show with a wingspan of 80 feet. I can't even tell you, you know, we invested in that show thinking, this is going to run for 20 years. We're putting a spectacle. It didn't work out that way. And I think it was just going the opposite way. We went from this massive show and 30 employees and dancers and production, and we were paying the stagehands, and our next project was in this 160-seat underground theater and bar. We found this garage space underground. It was just nothing. And we just put all of our focus into this. And I will tell you, the scale change can be explained in one way. At one point during the jumbo jet, American Airlines jumbo jet vanish, we had a video screen come in, as you do in those tricks, that shoots the plane from above on this huge crane to show it's there. And Hobson's the pilot and he's waving. And but I got, this show can't just have a video screen. So we put a scenic picture frame around it. Looked like a gilded frame so that it fit with the idea of Carnival of Wonders. Mm-hmm. So that show went away. Magic Underground, that frame was used as our entire proscenium for stage. Now what was 6 months before just part of one of our illusions was now our entire proscenium.
Wow. But I suppose that presented a challenge of what you can do and how you can make something unique with the constraints that you had with the environment in which you were in, right?
Well, that's what's funny. So we opened Magic Underground. It was a fantastic place. It ran for 5 years. This was back when there weren't magic theaters everywhere. It was sort of a new thought. But of course, we opened this amazing place and we write this really kind of theatrical show. And people, our customers come. And what, I said, what do we compete with? Our last project. Where's that Hobson guy? Where are the Tigers? Where's the jumbo jet? And now, Weird Reno, which I particularly enjoy doing, it's a walking tour, not entirely. It's got its theatrical stuff. But our customers come and they're like, where's that? Are you ever going to do something like Magic Underground again? No, this is what we're doing. Very frustrating.
I can imagine it would be. And I want to talk about the walking tour, but before I do, I think there's one more section that we need to cover. So after Magic Underground, is that about the period of time that you got involved with the Illusionists at that point?
Here's how that worked out. We spent 5.5 years with Magic Underground, literally underground in this, putting everything into it. And when we came out of it, close it up, we got to work. And 5 years later, we didn't have, the contacts were different. Hadn't been out there for 5 years. You know how it is, it's like if you just went away for 5 years, you come back, it's a different playing field. There's other performers and other people so we had a 1 year struggle. Like, will we ever do that kind of magic again? The big stuff. And we felt 5 years older, maybe 10 years older. And it's like, but then, yes, we got a call. It wasn't the opening of the Illusionists, which was at the Sydney Opera House, but a certain magician in that cast got kicked out after Sydney for some personal problems. That's all I'm going to say. So that left an opening. And Simon, there was a number of people they considered, but Simon said, do you want to join the show and take this spot of this act, which was not an illusionist, stage illusionist. And so that was 2012. Here's what I can tell you that was part of that ride that was so fascinating. Simon Painter, that was his idea for a show. Certainly there's been other shows, multiple magicians and everything. But I watched him turn that idea on a poster, because it really was a poster first. He had no show. He only had the poster that he shot. Figure out if he sells a show, he'll make the show up. Watched him go from 2012 to then, I guess it was 2019, when he sold the brand to Cirque du Soleil. after 5 times on Broadway, Sydney Opera. I mean, it just astounding to watch somebody go through that process, how it's done. And also, to be fair, to throw in, every decision he made, I thought was exactly the wrong decision. Oh, terrible. That's going to kill the brand. Are you kidding? You can't do that. Proven wrong over and over. Wow. What happened in the process, though, also naturally, started out as performers and then started to get on the production end, create magic, work with the other performers, and become as much behind the scenes as in front of the scenes, including casting and bringing acts for their shows, and kind of on the whole gambit of what you can do for a big touring show.
And was it nice being in it? Because you said that one of the things you enjoyed about Carnival and Spellbound was working with Hobson and having Jinger as her own person. Was it nice having that again as an ensemble piece? Because Jinger wasn't just an assistant; she was, from memory, the temptress, wasn't she, or something? And you know,
the enchantress, and later the conjuress.
Yes, yes.
And that was something that almost, you know, so many weird stories here. But yeah, that was the next hurdle to get over. Was we get into the show, and we'd been turned down the first time for the Sydney one. It was like, no, not you. We're like, ugh. So when they called the second time, we go, okay, not going to blow this. This is our chance. We're going to get in that show, because nobody knew in the beginning if it was, you could see this thing's taken off. And yes, to answer your question, you're working with people at the top of their game, lighting designers. And I mean, it's just, but also you are working on a level of entertainment that is brutal. It is brutal because they don't make choices by who's the legend in the cast. Let's give him, you know, it's like, I'm sorry. What makes the best show? It's got to move fast. If it doesn't score, that comes out. And by the way, you don't get on the next tour because there's 100 other guys. It's a brutal, real world, high-end entertainment to work in. The fact that we're still connected with them is miraculous to me, because you think every show's your last.
Well, I mean, would you, is the Illusionist, you know, with COVID coming, you know, hopefully to an end in the not too distant future, are the Illusionists coming back? Would you come back to the Illusionists in the future?
So the answer is, okay, so it's complicated because the brand was sold to Cirque du Soleil, and everybody thought, okay, well now instead of 5 Illusionists, there'll be 50. Because they're going to put them all over the world. Well, COVID hit, Cirque du Soleil went bankrupt. They cut all their shows, they're restructuring, and it's going to grow from there. Yes, Illusionists will be back. As a matter of fact, we have a gig in July with them. Great cast: Dave Williamson, Jonathan Goodwin, Chris Cox's protege guy, and Kevin James and Jinger and I. So that's the first Illusionist back.
What a lineup.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. But I don't think you're going to see that explosion of 50 Illusionists. And to be truthful, I think that's good.
Yeah.
Trying to make that just into a cookie cutter show. You could always see the Illusionist and people would say it was fantastic or it was not so good, depending on the cast.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I can see where you're coming from there.
Can I tell you, though, the most common question I get, because we do a lot of casting, which means I get a lot of videos. I've got to go through them, and eventually, you know, the ones that I know that might interest Simon or Neil, the producer, and they're still involved. Even though Simon sold it, he's still involved. But here's what I want to tell you. He never looks at anybody's video for more than like 3 seconds. just scratches through it, boom. With Illusionists, he looks at it, and if he sees that low center table, suspended animation, wind shear, name him, he's like, okay, next. He's not interested. Everything he needs to know about that magician, he knows. Because he's looking for something that invigorates him. A personality, something to the table unexpected, or at the very least, magic he hasn't seen before.
Yeah. And so somebody who's wanting to take a leap in their career and they're wanting to get on an ensemble show, what would you say is the best way to go ahead and do that? Like,
do something fucking great.
But you know what? I mean, let's look at Hobson.
Okay, all right.
No, but let's look at Hobson.
Do something amazing. I'll change that so you can edit it.
Because Jeff is a guy who basically made his career doing the egg bag and card to mouth.
Yeah, but is there anybody in the world like Jeff?
Nope.
Is there anybody? I call him the machine gun of comedy. I watch him. It's like the laughs come like a machine gun. Mm-hmm. And I will also tell you a secret that I have observed over the years. I mean, they've had everybody. I mean, the top people have been involved with the Illusionists. Nobody has been more sought after or highly paid than Jeff Hobson. Because they view him, and rightfully so, that any show they put him in any country of the world, he will deliver and make that show better. In fact, he'll dominate it. And in the real world of entertainment, they don't care how much it costs. They just know that, whether it's Broadway or whatever, they put Jeff in. So kudos to Jeff and that egg bag for beating out Illusionist with hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of equipment.
Yeah, and he's more sought after with an egg bag and a pack of cards.
And he walked away from it. He started his venue in Palm Springs, and believe me, Jeff, please, how about just one gig here? How about one more time in Broadway? Blah, blah, blah. He's like, no, I've got my commitment. I'm done.
Wow. What can you say?
I know. I could learn an egg bag.
So that brings us obviously to Weird Reno, which I want everyone to know about, because I've got a mentor, a friend of mine who's like a motivational speaker. And he said at the very beginning of COVID, when it hit and everybody, the entire world went into lockdown, he said, what does this make possible? If you don't come out of this whole situation having developed something new and adapted to the situation, then you've missed a trick. And that's what you've done. You've created an entirely new business that's completely scalable out of a situation that has, and let's be honest with ourselves, crippled most magicians around the whole of the world. I know magicians that are just sitting there at home hoping that things are going to get back to normal, and you've gone, well, what does this make possible? And you've created this amazing experience, which is really inspirational. Do you want to talk about where that came about, what it's all about?
Again, let's see. There is some fundamentally different things about this project. This is the project that we based on going the opposite way from every mistake we've made. I mean, we've made so many mistakes you just do. You're a long time in the business, you're going to make every mistake you can make. And you hopefully weed them out. And so number one, yes, it was a reaction to COVID. But it was an idea that was quite old. That famous saying, the whole world's a stage. That's not, whatever is supposed to be the bad thing, to me, is what makes something interesting. It's the challenge. Yes, anybody can do a magic show in a perfectly appointed theater with fly space and spotlights, but can you do it in an old warehouse? Can you do it outside? And if you open yourself up to the possibilities and say, gosh, that wall is actually, it's turning lemons into lemonade. And the other thing was, we were like everybody else, financially strapped, not the time to produce a show and invest dollars or all that stuff. But this is a pretty streamlined thing. Mm. What about if we just go out and do it, But of course, we also couldn't do it without adding our theatricality or our Kalin and Jinger to it. So there's elements to it that are just what you would imagine a walking tour. And it's a little zany and funny and unexpected. And there's some neat places we go to with history. There's history in it. But also there's that stuff you expect. I mean, the whole thing starts. We have a beautiful, what we call host location called the Renaissance Hotel that gave us this underground wine bar that they weren't using. So that's our little, secret underground where everybody meets, and we set the stage, we break out on this, we all return there. And there's things like a time capsule that, is sealed at the beginning. We don't open to the end of the tour, and, used all those creative things. It's still in the process. It still ain't perfect, but it's also very freeing for me after all those years of doing illusions and the expense and admiring some really clever mentalism and crazy funny stuff. This was, but yeah, basically it came down to this. We had this idea. We went to the city to get a permit. This would have been 7 or 8 months ago. No permits allowed for theaters. Closed down. You can't have theaters. You can't do a show. Illegal. But if it's a walking tour outdoors, we can do that. So we got our permit in the middle of COVID.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
And we waited till the right time. We were going to originally launch it last October, but the numbers were going up in COVID deaths, and people were, but we were probably the first entertainment option of its type to open in Reno. We meet with the city on these big Zooms with all these event companies trying to figure out, and we're like, well, we're actually opening, March 8th or whatever. And they're like, mind blowing. Really? We're going to be that sacrificial lamb.
But it's been very, very popular. I mean, it's done really well. So here's a question: if I snap my fingers and COVID ended completely tomorrow, would you carry on doing Weird Reno? Are you going to carry on going out? Would you do it yourself, or are you going to try and?
No. The plan. What I was going to say, there's some fundamentally different things about this entertainment project. This is the first entertainment project we have ever attempted that is not focused on us being the sole performers. So that adds a whole new level of challenge. However, we like challenges to this project. And that is, can we create something that we can replicate and that we can pull out and have it still run? And, without us. So in creating it, we have to be very careful. But the idea is, yes, pull ourselves out, replicate it. If we can do 1, then we can do 2. If we can do 2, we can do 10. If you want 50, so that was so yes, this may be one of our smarter business moves forced by the stress of COVID.
And would you replicate, you've talked about replicating this, that's obviously in Reno. If this becomes like ridiculously successful, would you replicate it in Vegas or somewhere else? Or,
here's the thing. By its very nature, the idea was low overhead, easy operation, just a little machine with some high concept, entertainment value, wacky stuff like bizarre bath, but also some really magical things. The plan is to kind of get that worked out this summer, and then yes, sell it. And I can tell you, it can go anywhere, because other than changing the script, you can put it anywhere. And so we have some very particular ideas about unexpected places where this walking tour could go. In fact, we have started calling it Promenade Theater. Okay, that's a little lofty. It's a walking tour.
If people are, you know, obviously tourism's now coming back. If anybody's watching this and they're planning on going to Reno and they want to see this, have you got a URL? Have you got a website that I can drop at the bottom?
weirdreno.com. Weirdreno.com. That's our the tour here. But then also our regular website, if you're just interested in Kalin and Jinger, that has Carnival of Wonders and our history and stuff. That's bestmagicshow.com. Best Magic Show. That will give you. That's our main website.
It's amazing. I'll put those down below, and there'll be a link in the description as well.
Perfect.
I've got one more question for you, Mark. And I just want to say before I ask this last question, this has been an incredible interview. You know,
Really?
I've openly said on this channel over and over again that you're one of my personal heroes. You have inspired me so much in my career, and this has been incredible to chat to you. My question is, what's next? Is there anything left on your magical bucket list? Now, and to be clear, you have literally done it all. You have produced successful shows. You are considered one of the top illusionists in the world. You have been there, done that. You've reinvented yourself over and over again. You're not just an amazing magician and illusionist, but you are a very successful businessman. You can't be operating at the level that you have your entire career and done everything that you've done without being an entrepreneur, a business person, and an incredible performer. If you decided to retire tomorrow, nobody, like your legacy, Mark, yours can just let
that word again.
Set, but it's true. It is. You know, it is. Is there anything left that you want to do?
There is, because it's all just magic. We love magic, don't we? We love magic the way we loved it when we were 10 years old. I mean, it's an obsession. And so all these things is just new ways to still do magic. So that will never stop for me. I can't retire from that. There may be times when I'm not making money at it, but I'm still going to be, you know, it's just in me. And as it is with you and anybody listening out there, we love it. All I ever wanted to be was a good magician.
Well, you nailed that one, didn't you? And then
you haven't seen all the shows.
I've seen enough, man. I've seen enough.
We didn't get to that. All the disaster shows.
Well, you know what? I'm not going to let you off the hook with that one. Before we sign this whole interview up, can you share with us one horror story, or one?
Oh God!
One funny situation.
I have some pretty rich horror stories. Look, I'm gonna clap here so you can edit. Tell me, because the one that first comes to mind was our masturbating monkey story.
I ain't editing this out, Mark. Not a chance.
I haven't gotten there yet.
What is that? Need to know.
So at one point in Ginger's and I's career, we were living in Vegas. We were working at the Folies Bergère. Lance had moved on, and we were working in the at the Tropicana. Great show, and we had a brand new trick. We called it the de-evolution machine. We got a man out of the audience. For whatever reason, we dressed him up as Elvis. I don't remember why. And we put him in this big thing, and we would crush him down, and it would go through a tube. And this canister would reveal him dressed the same way as this monkey. Basically, it was a macaque. Macaque are the same animals that they shot to the moon. They're very human. And Gizmo was his name. And he would appear and wearing this little outfit. But you know, and this was a big gig for us. And also, by the way, this was a dinner show, so just in those venues, you know, the people are like right at your feet eating their prime rib, and they're right there, the things. And I would reveal Gizmo. But he was at that age where he was feeling his oats. And you're going to have to probably, you know, I may have to give you another story, but I'll finish this one. It's so good. But he had, in his load chamber, which he just hung out in there, he had chewed a hole in his pants, and he was masturbating. And the thing I can tell you about it, let's see. Number one, you know, like baboons and stuff, monkey organs are extremely long and bright, like bright pink. Packs small, plays big, right? Number two, what do they look like when they do that? They look like what everybody looks like doing that, right? That's it. They're just going at it. But also they have this face you've seen when they grimace. It's like a smile. Ah. So he's going at it. I produce him, and I'm like, oh my God. Okay. Off stage, fine. Hand them the wardrobe, his little outfit, and you're gonna have to fix that hole for the late show. Gizmo was about sitting down. He was about this tall. So they fix it. Second show, same thing. Nothing's gonna stop him. Boom, appears. Oh shit, off stage, right? People are like going. So then you're gonna have to make a heavier costume out of, you know. And these are costing me, by the way. I'll just cut to the chase. About $150 a costume to have wardrobe, make them out of canvas, reinforced fabric, everything. Nothing was gonna stop Gizmo. And the management came to me and said, you know, Mark, you're gonna have to take care of this, because we can't have that on our dinner show every night. But a brilliant idea came. First of all, it was horrifying. Second of all, I so feared that, but it was such a good trick. Finally, I went to wardrobe and I said, can you make him a grass skirt? And can you make the grass stuff bright pink?
I like that, yeah.
Hidden in plain sight. Magically appeared. Oh, look how cute that monkey is playing with his skirt. Gizmo.
Well, for me, that's a very inspiring story about thinking outside the box and, you know, learning how to solve problems at the spur of the moment. That's great. And
yeah, it's, if you're going to be in the business, you're going to fail big. Just get it out of your head. It's going to happen. Hey, the biggest failure of the most recent career in front of millions of people may not know, but Don Wayne and I worked feverishly, whatever it was, 4 years ago on America's Got Talent, and just a brutal thing, producing for Damien Adita, one of their star illusionists, this giant, unbelievable, expensive, 2-story, death-defying illusion that was a crowning achievement for Don and I. We felt when we were, it's like, I mean, this is amazing. It's used. And then, of course, on live TV, it failed.
did it? I didn't see that. Oh, man. Really?
Yeah, it was, I'll just say, a brilliant idea of an upside down. So, I mean, the method was fooling. There was no stairs, no trapdoors, none of that stuff. A crate that was 30 feet in the air, hung by a chain that he would get in, and below were these spikes that were lit on fire, and the thing would free fall, and literally his hands were out, live hands, when it starts to fall. I mean, it was a Don Wayne brilliant illusion. And we rehearsed it, and I've got, you know, And that when it would crash, it would break apart and it would explode. The producers came to me and said, this is like the best thing. This is after the day rehearsal. Like one of the best. I was a hero. Don was too. And that night, if you've ever done a table of death or anything like that, it's going beautifully. Judges are there, just going beautifully. And then that moment comes and the rope burns through and it goes, and just gets stuck.
Oh no. Oh no. Oh my gosh.
And you can't do anything. Can't get him out, can't finish the trick. It just, and to make it even worse, it turned into a viral moment because that was a particular one where whatever the Spice Girl was, got in an argument over Simon over that trick and how bad, they were trying to decide how bad it was. And he said to her, it's so bad, it's like your wedding night, all build up and no climax or something like that. And she threw a Coke in his face and walked off the show. And that made it a viral moment, which means that failure and that moment was all over the internet.
Oh man. But there's an expression in the UK which is today's news is tomorrow's chip paper. At the end of the day,
Yeah.
people are going to have something else to talk about. They're going to have something else to moan about. People forget that in the UK, and I'm happy to talk about this because I did an interview with him and he brought it up. But there's a guy called Dave Allen, who's a very successful magician, illusionist. He's a council member of the Magic Circle. And many, many years ago, he went on BGT and he did a duck cannon illusion. And the duck was meant to fire into the thing, and as he opened it up, and the first duck came out, and he didn't see it, and he turned around, and the other duck was there, and there were two ducks, and Piers Morgan said, "Well, you're ducked," and it was a horrible moment, but I mean, he's gone on to achieve so much success in his career as an illusionist, as a magician, an award-winning performer, and I think that's the most important thing to think about. If you have one of these horrible situations where everything's gone wrong, it's very easy to think, that's it, my career's over.
Well, the end story of this was I had been hired by AGT as their very first magic producer. And my job was to basically just take all these largely green acts that like that Damien did had one great illusion, which they loved him, but he didn't really have any great ideas after that. So boom. So that was my position. And Don and I knew it wasn't good and that didn't work. We thought, but you know what? We know how to fix this, because I'll tell you what, he gets voted off, which he did that night. And, but bring him back on the show and he'll do the trick again. And we'll do a climax that is completely unexpected. We had all these fixes for it. So we meet with the producers and head executive producers from AGT the next day. And we were scheduled to work for like another 5 weeks on other projects. And we said, so here's what we're thinking. And we're thinking, and then this and this. And they go, yeah, okay, but here's your plane tickets. Your plane leaves today at 4. Gone. Done.
Oh, man.
That's the big time.
Wow.
But you know what? It was working for AGT was exhilarating, but also the highest pressure. I mean, the level that they work on week after week on that, I'm not made for that. It's,
And would you find it difficult? Obviously you're a performer yourself. I imagine you would find it difficult just putting everything into somebody else, not being.
No, I enjoy that.
Oh, do you? Well, I know you like being producer. Okay.
I do. I like, you know what? There's some things I love so much, I keep it to myself. It's like, I want to do this trick. But I got so many ideas. And so going back to that story about Carnival of Wonders, that was about creating a show I got to be in. But it was really fun to come up with stuff for Jeff, you know, and come up stuff for Jinger. And same thing with the Illusionist, designing magic for other illusionists. I love that. In fact, you know, yeah, no, I enjoy that. I don't have that problem. And there is a certain Zen feeling when it gets close to curtain time and everybody's putting their makeup, of going out in the house with a clipboard. Okay, here's where I get to sit this out, make notes. I don't mind that.
Would you like to be in the future, when your career's winding down as like an actor performer many years from now? Would you like to be like a Joni Spina and like pass on everything that you've learned to the next generation?
First of all, my career has been winding down for quite a few years. But what you're talking about is what both Jinger and I have been doing for like the last 5 or 6 years. We still perform, we still enjoy it, but we have a number of projects with the Illusionists and other ones where we're behind the scenes. Jinger was on tour with the Illusionists as the artistic director, and actually there was an Illusionist here in Reno that ran a year, and she was the artistic, which means she was in charge of keeping the show tight, making adjustments and stuff, and she super enjoyed that. It's fun to do both.
Well, let me ask one final question before we wrap this up, which is, if somebody's watching this and they are serious about taking their career to the next level and they really want to be the best that they can they reach out to you and speak to you?
Absolutely.
About consultancy?
And there is no, here's the interesting thing, and I can tell you this, it all comes from Simon down. There is no conceit on their end. Good is good to them, which means sometimes they go crazy out of a guy that's almost never been on stage because they see something that they feel is marketable in their show. So it doesn't require hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of props. It does not require a history of performing in casino shows for 20 years or anything. You just have to have something really good and original that 20 other people don't have.
Yeah.
You know, that's really is it. And, you know, I know a lot of people, they say, I'm not a creative person, or I'm not like you. I don't have all these ideas and stuff. Much as we talked about the personality thing, about, you know, what's a practical way, how to be yourself. Here's a really simple way to be super creative. And believe me, I use this all the time. When you have an idea for a trick, and undoubtedly you've seen it on YouTube, or you've seen videos, or you've seen it in a performance, just start with one simple thing. Whatever you do, just don't do that. Meaning that performance. You can do anything you want, and you may have no idea what it is, but start by just saying, well, whatever I do, I'm not going to do that off that YouTube video. That starts. That's a way to start it. And a lot of times I'm enamored by a piece of material. Oh, that's really good. But I also know I'm never going to feel right. I'm never going to feel great about it. I'm never going to use that, you know, if I just make it easy. So I don't know what I'm going to do, but I go, okay, my starting point is I'm not going to copy that. And that'll get you on your way.
Yeah. Brilliant advice. And very true. And also an amazing way to end this interview. Mark, this has been incredible. This has been absolutely incredible.
It's been an honor. I'm a huge fan of all your work. I watch your online videos all the time. You're honest. You know, I go, and you do the performances. I go, oh, I can see what that is. Yeah. I really am. Anyway, I'm honored to be part of this.
That means a lot. It really does, Mark. And thank you so much. I know how busy you are. You haven't even slowed down during a global pandemic. I don't think anything could stop you guys. So thank you so much for finding time to go on this. And I'll tell you something. I want everyone to check out. Next time I'm in Reno, I'm taking that walking tour. Weird Reno. I'm there 100%. Go check out the URLs down below. And leave a comment in the video, because if you've got anything to say, leave the comment. Hopefully Mark will see that. And yeah, Mark, one more time, thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
You're the man. Guys, I will see you again tomorrow. Thanks very much for watching. My name's Craig from Magic TV.